I'm going to call the meeting to order. Okay. The first item on the agenda, I don't know, Liza, did you want to go first with the report on the strategic plan?
I'd be happy to.
You want to do that? Okay. Why don't we go with that first? Okay. Liza has been a representative from the Education Committee to the Board of Ed strategic plan, and it's been a lot of work during a pandemic. So we wanted to know if she would talk to us a little bit about the work that she's done leading up to the final plan. Okay, Liza, go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Can you hear me okay? I have on my headphones.
I can hear you.
Okay. First of all, thank you. Thanks for allowing me to participate in the committee. It was really a great pleasure to be part of the committee. I learned a lot and I really enjoyed all of the meetings and all of the discussions that went into it. I will just give you a brief overview of what the committee looked like and what we did during our meetings, and then I'll also give you just a very quick outline of the final work product of the committee, and then sort of the current status of the project. And then if anyone has questions as I go along, please just let me know. We met originally back in January of 2020, so we're a year and a few months into it now. There was a pause, obviously, during the initial part of the pandemic, but we regrouped virtually about a couple months in. I think there's about almost 30 participants on the committee, and it's a broad array of professionals and parents and students. There were a variety of different teachers, administrators of all levels. We had some elementary principals. We had some, I think Darien High School principal. We had quite a good representation. We had a few Board of Ed members, various heads of student parent volunteer organizations like CDSP, DAEG, CPAC, and as I mentioned, we had two Darien High School students who were terrific and incredibly valuable as part of the process. And the group was led by Dr. Richard Lemons, who is a professional educational consultant, and he works with the Connecticut Center for School Change. And I think he does this for a good handful of districts, kind of spearheads this process so that people know how to get to the end of it. We had about 4 or 5 in-person meetings before the quarantine. I believe they were about 3 hours each. They were really lengthy but really productive. We discussed the purpose of the committee and the strategic planning process, and we developed working agreements for how the group was going to function. And then we went to work analyzing the current status of the Darien Public Schools. We discussed its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and some threats that folks were able to identify. And the major question at that initial meeting was basically, what do we want for the students of the Darien Public Schools? And then we went on, as we were working just from the very beginning, the emphasis was always to take a 30,000 foot view of things, and not to settle into any particulars, but to really look at it with an aspirational view. The next thing we did is we went to work conducting a needs assessment. Topics that we researched and discussed included teaching and learning, technology, organizational routines and systems, the culture of our school district and the town, retaining and supporting educators, and success. That took a long time going through those. And then once we kind of worked our way through that, we did various exercises to kind of, knit out what we really wanted to focus on. Then we turned to crafting the sort of core documents. And that's what, I don't know if anyone was able to see I was at the February 25th, I think was the most recent meeting where they discussed it. And that's the most recent version that I've seen also is those documents that were distributed as a part of the agenda. And you'll see in there, there's the mission, the vision, and the core values of the Darien Public Schools, including some 5-year goals to guide the improvement efforts of the district. At that last meeting in February, I believe the plan, we discussed a handful of things, mostly the mission. That was the big target of discussion. Let's see, and that was the one item that was discussed most heavily. I think the other items are going to look really similar to what they look like in that agenda. But the mission is supposed to be a statement of why an organization exists, the purpose of that organization, what that organization is going to do on a daily basis in service of their vision. That's what a mission is supposed to say. And I think that the status of this right now is going to say schools exist for children. The mission of the Darien Public Schools is to inspire a love of learning in all students so that they may develop into critical thinkers and innovative creators who contribute to the world, live with integrity, and have a purpose beyond themselves. And I hope I've quoted that properly because that was sort of drafted during the meeting. And then they went on, the vision has not changed. The vision is something that should explain where our organization is trying to get to, what are we aspiring to. I believe Dr. Lemons has referred to it as the North Star. And our current vision is drafted as follows: preparing all students today to thrive in a changing world tomorrow. And then the last chunk is the core values. And those are the beliefs and the collective commitments that the folks at Darien Public Schools are going to make to shape the culture and path for achieving this mission and the vision. So the collective commitments for the students, the faculty, the staff. And right now I'll go through them very quickly, but I will point out that with the exception of the first core value, which is wellness, I know Dr. Adley felt strongly about putting that first. The other items are just alphabetically ordered. So it's wellness, creating balanced learning environments that are physically, socially, emotionally, and intellectually safe and healthy. Collaboration, working openly, productively, and interdependently toward common goals. Diversity and inclusion, creating a community that welcomes and embraces the full range of human differences. Equity, advancing for and advancing opportunities and outcomes for all. Excellence, delivering the highest quality of education for each student to reach their individual potential. Innovation, leading with creativity and ingenuity through the disciplined problem solving. Integrity, acting honestly and ethically with shared accountability. And the last one is respect and civility, acting with consideration for the feelings, thoughts, experiences, and rights of others. There's a host of goal areas. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I did want to point out that one of the goal areas is improving school facilities for student safety and access to learning. And there's an additional note in one of the action items, which is to identify improvements for best practices in emergency and safety planning, along with necessary resources. And I only mention that because I know our committee has specifically discussed that at length. And so I was happy that that was included in these core documents. But that's a real quick rundown because it's a lot of information.
Okay, thank you, Liza. Does anyone have questions for Liza? Okay, Peter?
I have questions, and also I want to make a statement here. So first, I think that's wonderful, Liza. I mean, it's unbelievable how much time you spend, guys, on it, and it's a very important document that you guide the district, right, and the aspirational goals that we have. I'm shocked that the 27 participants are actually able to agree on something, which is wonderful. But in order to make it sort of not make it a sort of McKinsey study that we'll put on the shelf somewhere, we actually now need to put the specific behind these, yeah. And that's where I think the real work starts now. I know the board will take it and they will, they'll advance it. But there are two comments that I wanted to make, and I don't want to go. I read through the document a couple of times. There are two comments that I wanted to make that sort of, one of them rubbed me the wrong way, and the other one I think should be bigger focus. The one that I was questioning was one of the core values there, especially the equity here. And maybe it's just the way it's phrased, but it says that the equity means it's advocating for and advancing opportunities and outcomes for all. And I agree with the opportunities, but I totally disagree with the outcomes here, because we cannot guarantee equity of outcomes for all, right? I grew up in a society that guaranteed equity of outcomes, and it's not a fun life to live. So I just would be very careful that we have it in there. We have to give everybody a chance to succeed, but we cannot guarantee all of them the same success. But the second thing is, I looked through the second, this is more important really, is I looked through the 7 goals. And what surprised me that we start with goals about what teachers need to do, right? And how are we going to help teachers get better? That's important. That's obviously important. Enhancing teaching and learning. But what really needs to happen first, next steps, is to define, which is this goal 3, which is goal area 3, which is developing a portrait of a graduate. We need to define, what do we want the kid to look like when he's 18? What knowledge he wants to have, right? What foreign languages, computers, statistics, whatever, everything we all determine is important for future success that the mission and vision determines. And based on that, we can determine what the teachers need to know, what facilities we know. I know this is already happening and therein is a high level, but this whole process that you guys have been spending time on needs to put us to another level, to the highest level of public education in the country, I think at least. So anyway, they were just the 2 comments. I thought, I know this is a public forum. I wanted, if anybody from Board of Education is listening to it, I wanted them to hear it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Tara, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I was just wanting to know if you would just repeat the center that Dr. Lemon is from.
Sure. It's the Connecticut Center for School Change.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Eliza? Okay. I had one question, and Peter touched on this, the idea of the portrait of a graduate. I thought that was very significant. And then I was listening to another town's information about their educational system, and they also mentioned portrait of a graduate. And I was wondering, is this something that's a term and a concept that's being used, say, throughout Connecticut or throughout the country? Did Dr. Lemons talk about that and how Darienne's portrait would be unique?
We did talk about it. I know very little about this, from a wider perspective, but I do know what I learned from it as a part of this process. And I know that we are in the middle of putting that together right now. I know there's a committee that is, working to get their portrait of the graduate done. I know that it was discussed at the last meeting about whether that needed to be complete before we could include it in our own strategic plan. And I think there was some ideas that we could either wait or we could adopt and then decide how to go from there. I think you could do it a couple of different ways. I don't think the board has decided how they want to do it yet. And I know that a lot of schools, we did see other districts, strategic plans during one of the meetings that we were working on. And I think several of them do refer overtly to their portrait of the graduate. I think it is something a lot of schools are doing now for reasons that, Peter mentioned. It helps really focus and tighten up, those goals that you have for the district. So I don't know as far as nationally if that's something that schools are doing, but I think there's definitely schools in Connecticut that are making this part of their strategic plan.
Thank you. Teresa, did you have a question? I think you're muted, Teresa. I think you're
Sorry
muted.
about that. Yep, I was muted.
Okay.
The whole idea of portrait of the graduate has actually been discussed even when Dr. Brenner was the superintendent. I can remember sitting in my first executive board meeting at the DHSPA, and it was a discussion even back then. And I think a lot of it has to do with trying to, as a district, get away from this idea that a graduate of Darien is, this portrait of the graduate is only somebody who goes to a four-year college. And, trying to, that we are more than just that our students are more than just that, because going to a four-year college is not going to be every student. And that does not mean that they have failed as a graduate of, the Darien schools. So this discussion has happened. This discussion's been going on, gosh, for as long as I've been involved at the high school.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Liza? I can only see certain people, so if anybody's not being called on, just speak out, okay? Liza, so the strategic plan is still being worked on, or has it been adopted by the Board of Ed?
Not yet. So where I think it's at now is Dr. Adley, Chris Tranberg, and Dr. Lemons are sort of like putting their final like wordsmithing on the document based on the last comments in February at the board meeting. But I do believe the plan is that the next time this is on the agenda, that they would like to, it will hopefully be a final version. I think that's the goal, that the next go round will hopefully be the final go round.
Okay, and are you all still meeting then? Or have you
No.
finished?
No, I think we're kind of, the committee's kind of taken a backseat and it's in the hands of the real pros now.
Okay, well, I mean, I thought some interesting points were raised by Peter, particularly the one about the equity of outcomes. And I wondered,
Yeah.
I guess they will watch this film. That way they'll see what reaction was, he had. So I think that would be an important point to bring back to them in some way. So
Definitely.
Okay.
Can I just ask?
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Ed.
just,
That's okay.
well, just that I should have asked it earlier, and I apologize, this is a dumb question, but does equity of outcomes mean like everybody gets the same grade and it's all an A or B or whatever it is? Is that, I don't know what equity of outcome means, but I know I think I know what equity means in terms of like access, but Peter used that term.
Yeah.
But is that's kind of, you are being a little bit sarcastic and I agree with you, but that's what you meant, right? Like we can't assure that everybody kind of has the same end result because then why would we have grades?
Correct. That's right. That's grades. And it's also, we cannot ensure it. We can provide them the best teaching, right?
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah.
just absorbs it better, is interested more and stuff. And
Yeah.
this is used all over the society, and anyway, I'll stop there.
No, but I think that's interesting because the idea that not everybody's going to be going to a four-year college, I mean, that goes against an equity of an outcome, right? Because if you're going to say that different outcome, different students will, graduate with a different mind, a different potential education experience, that's something that is not equitable, right? I think the opportunity should be equitable, but the outcome, I don't know that you can guarantee. I think that's what you're saying, isn't it?
Right. Yes. And more importantly, I guess for this whole process, what I think is critical is that at the end of it, we determine, after we know the goals, the portrait of the graduate, and what we need from facilities and skills of the teachers, that we actually have measurable checkpoints, that we say this is how we're going to behave next 5 years. But so this is the document we should evaluate. The administration, the superintendent should say, well, we all said that everybody needs to have a statistic, or did everybody take it? Or maybe we determined that everybody needs to, take how many classes of physical education and all this. I mean, this has got to be measurable. Otherwise, this is a nice document. I've seen a lot of them, right? Companies throw it on the shelf and just don't use it. In order to be used, there's got to be translation of the results to the to actually measurable outcomes. The next step would be to actually have compensation related to it, but we know that apparently in public, system, it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, it might be interesting to ask whether strategic plan whether teachers will be evaluated against goals in the strategic plan.
Right.
Will that be used to evaluate success? Did I see Ann's hand up?
Yeah,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask about, Liza, whether the concept of equity that Peter was questioning, in your understanding of it, was that kind of an aspirational look, like we want to offer all our students the ability to get as far as they can get based on their ability, with being offered all support and, I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's not a hard and fast outcome, but we're going to offer all our students the ability to be lifted up to reach their potentials.
Yeah, I mean, definitely
Yes.
that's
Yes.
the idea, is that we want everyone to have opportunities, and the advancing, everyone should have access to the classes that give them the most opportunities and push their potential. I agree that as we're looking at this, the outcomes is, that language is confusing.
And we probably can spend, it's 27 people and 9 people on the board. We can spend every page like this, but this is the one that, and I would advise everybody to look at that document and just if there is something bad to maybe email Liza, right? So she can convey it or we can direct it to Dr. Adley. But if there's something that's like a red handkerchief, this one was for me at least.
Yeah, I mean, this is not finished, this document. So there is time, I think, for us to, raise our hands and say, we find this bit of language to be confusing. And I think it's possible that I wasn't in the core group that worked on equity, but I think that there might be a way to explain this that makes a lot of sense that I'm just not doing right now.
Right.
You didn't have any preparation for all the questions we have. I think it's important that we bring this up because we're seeing it not as the insiders that worked on it, but sort of what does this look like to the community, and that's our job. I think, Tara, I think you had your hand up, and I'm Megan too.
I did, just commenting on the same thing that Peter was talking about. And yes, I agree with you. You cannot guarantee equitable outcome, right? I mean, kids come in at different levels, but that's, I think also you see this being thrown around a lot these days, this equitable outcome. And it's gotten, I think the idea behind it is to, yes, give the kids support where they need it, right? But the idea is also to give them as much support as they need in order to end at the same part that the child that doesn't need any support ends at. Which is it's a slippery slope. So this guarantee of equitable outcomes is dangerous.
Sorry, can I come back to this then? Because look, I'm trying to ask a question to understand what this means, because equitable outcomes from the standpoint of everybody graduating from high school, that to me sounds like, yeah, we should be trying to do that. But equitable outcomes, everybody getting an A, that no, we should not be doing. So when I'm not asking this from I guess I'm just trying to understand when people talk about equitable outcomes, like I missed the meeting. What is it they're really, what is this code for is I guess my question. I mean, sorry if that's like, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm just trying to understand it because I have not, I'm just having trouble putting the words into what is it we actually mean.
Okay, does anybody want to respond, or is that something that Liza would take back, or that, the folks working intently on this now will be able to answer? I think it's good that we're having this discussion because I think it'll be helpful to the professionals working on the actual document. Does anyone want to respond to Ed, or is it better to let Dr. Adley and the board respond?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so?
I think so. Yes.
Okay, and someone has put in the chat room about where is the document. We will find it and make sure that it's available to everyone. Okay, let's see, Meg, did you have a question? Did you have your hand up?
Just so you guys know, it's on I just forwarded it to Nick, but it's if you go to the February 25th Board of Ed minutes that Clara sent it to us back, in February, it's all there.
Okay.
You'll see it. The mission is quite different in that document than what I talked about tonight, but everything else is pretty similar.
I think at a fairly recent meeting, didn't Tara Ockman and Katie Stein sort of rework the mission statement?
They did.
And so it's in, I guess, probably a meeting in March that addressed that, where that is addressed. So, as far as the mission statement itself, but the full document is in the February 26th.
25th, yes, it's all
25th.
there. And if anyone I can forward it if anyone needs it.
Okay, all right. Megan, was that your question, or did you have another question?
No, I had a different question.
Okay.
First of all, it sounds like you did a lot of work, Liza. So, kudos to you for investing the time. That's awesome.
Thank
It
you.
was fun.
The one core value that it's a bit of a thorn in my side for some reason. I don't know why. I have a visceral response to it when I see this word diversity. My problem is I don't really see a whole lot of diversity in our administration. I don't see diversity in our Board of Ed. I don't see diversity in many of the committees. I don't see diversity in when they go to scout and look for teachers. So while it's all well and good to enlist that as your core value, you know, actions speak a much louder than words. You can parade all the woke terminology that gets you the nods and the applause, but at the end of the day, you have to practice it. So yeah, the core value diversity, that's great. And I encourage it, and I'm very hopeful for it, but there needs to be material changes to actually reach that. Because
Agreed.
there's nothing of that sort here. I'm sorry. I mean,
They
I'm the
did
only
talk
non-white
about,
person currently on this committee, and you know, and it's just, you know, I again, I appreciate the sentiment, and I appreciate the want, but you can't do that with a Board of Ed and administration and, you know, an institute that doesn't necessarily have all of the structure that you need in order to facilitate a good, you know, program that fosters diversity. I used a lot of catchy words there, I'm sorry, but my point is, that's kind of.
I don't know if this makes you feel any better, but just to point out that they did discuss at the last meeting when they were going through this to add into like either the action items or the measures into the goals that they about open choice and about the student teacher program. I know they wanted those two things to be like, you know, discuss putting them in the document so that it would be because it's a priority. So I don't know if that makes you feel any better that they're actually, you know, they are taking some steps to make that core value meaningful, but that was something that was discussed as well. But
Okay, Peter and Barbara, I think you both had Peter.
Yeah,
I'm okay.
this is
Oh,
one thing
okay.
I want to also talk about during the budget, you know, so we'll get to that. But Meg, I partially disagree with you on this. Diversity is important, but you're saying that the board is the same. I totally disagree with you. Maybe alongside one line, right, is the same, right, which you are applying, it's a race. You know, religion, background, educational, age, children, no children, you know, bunch of other metrics that could be very diverse. I'm not saying that's the case or not, but I'm just, you know, want to point out that the race is just one of the 10 metrics we should be looking at. If we look at it at all, quite frankly, I would look at whether they are the most qualified and whether they are, you know, that's the most important thing for me. But
Peter, I agree. I agree with what you just said there in terms of, yeah, there are lots of other measures to look at, but I also, sorry, and if it was Megan, we haven't met before, but her point that we have to, this has to be more than just words. And I know I'm 100% confident the administration feels the same way, and they're not intending for it to be just words, but I still think it's a well said point that we have to do more than just say this is the goal and figure out how to actually achieve the targets or the goals that we're sort of setting out to do across, whether it's this board, other boards, the administration. I mean, there's some things that are easier to fix than others.
If I may.
Okay, I think Peter wants to respond, so I'm going to let him go first, right? Okay.
Thank you. I think this is critical, and you know, the teacher in residence, and you know what shocks me with this whole, we talk about this, right, and teacher resident program is that around us, I talked about it last time we met, Columbia has 30% minorities graduating from their teachers college. Minority is defined as a race minority. Teachers college in Connecticut has a similar numbers, even though maybe a little less, but not much, right? And I don't think we have the representation in town. So the question I have really during the budget discussion, which is related to the teachers resident, I would like Ms. Sion to come and be ready to defend the hiring practices and how many offers we give. Why don't we give more to these, or what do we look at? You know, quite frankly, I care about the best teacher, right? And you know, putting religion or race on it, whatever, is probably not fair to the teachers, right? I want the best teachers. But reality is, if 30% of teacher population around us is minorities, how come we don't have that many, right? So there's got to be an issue. There's going to be an easy out, probably a response. But I think That's one of the things I would like to discuss when we meet with the administration is this thing. And it cannot be just a sentence or two. There's got to be how many offers, how many declines, why, you know, and you know, some details so we can get under it. I mean, teachers, administrators, and people are 70% of the budget, right? We just need to understand it. I know we addressed it last year when we talked the teachers contract, but, and maybe Nissan addressed it in other presentations. I just don't recall them. So, thank you.
Any other comments? Are we ready to leave this? Oh, Barbara?
Yes, please. One comment. Just, I think that when we're talking about diversity and we're talking about the different places where it is or isn't evident personally in person, I think it's critical that we make make the voices that are diverse and are in our community and around it, that we make them available, that we listen, that we hear, that we make whatever we're talking about public. And I think that's almost as important as having an individual speaking the diverse things, just to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. I think that's what I would like to emphasize there.
Thank you. Any
Okay.
other comments? Nick? Nick?
Yeah, mine, I guess, is more of a question. Sorry, I didn't, you know, watch that meeting, and so I didn't have a chance to see how it was framed. But, you know, the strategic plan, is it really, you know, solely formulated around, you know, excelling on tests, you know, in terms of that measure of education or education of the graduate? Just like, does it include other activities? I have, like, are the coaches of the sports teams, are they viewed as educators? And, you know, because I know some coaches, they feel like the field is a classroom and they're teaching. And, you know, does the strategic plan encompass that in terms of other activities, whether it's theater or education or band? Just curious more.
I think, I mean, I know when we were discussing success as a committee, there was a very, very strong push to not define success as a certain measure of like test scores or, you know, as Teresa mentioned, like, you know, entrance to certain colleges. Success, there was a very, there's a big desire amongst almost everyone on the committee. I think I can say fairly that success should be, you know, include happiness and, you know, you know, the study of, you know, of something that makes each student, you know, interested and happy and productive and, you know, able to create and be innovative. It wasn't, you know, there was definitely not this idea that, you know, it should be achieving specific scores or specific, you know, athletic trophies. I mean, I think there's always going to be, it's important that academic excellence is part of our goals and our objectives, but I think that success is definitely not something that the committee wanted to define as, you know, numbers or awards.
Good.
Okay, Tara, did I see your hand up? Tara?
Yes. I was just back to the idea of diversity. I was just curious, as Peter mentioned, that there was 30% of the graduates from Columbia Teachers College being minorities. I was just curious about whether, like, what are we not seeing those applicants? Is there a reason we're not seeing those applicants? I was just curious, you know.
Okay. I think, does anybody have other questions for Liza or statements they want to make? Okay, I think this is a good segue. I wanted to tell you in response to the questions about the recruitment efforts. When the meeting was scheduled for a different day, I did invite Dr. Adley and Duke Deneen and their staffs to come and talk to us about recruitment. And because tonight is a Board of Ed meeting, they can't do that. But they are going to do it. And I think when they watch this video, they'll have a very good idea of the kind of questions we have and the level of specificity that we would like to have. So that, I think that we can count on having them come before we vote on the budget. And, you know, we'll look at our meeting schedule and see what works for all of us. So that part of the concern that we had way back in January, you know, we have brought that forward to the Board of Ed. So, anyway, I just want to let you know. And so the next thing, Yeah, go ahead.
Claire, can I just say one quick thing?
Of course.
I just wanted to point out, because I feel like this the diversity and inclusion has caused some discomfort, that it is also meant to include, you know, neurodiversity and people that have, you know, physical differences, and you know, it's not just meant for to be you know, pushing a anything that's, you know, racial or religious exclusively. It's meant to include, you know, everyone, every type of person, not just diversity as you're discussing, you know, the hires being from certain backgrounds. I just wanted to point out that it's meant to be a very broad goal overall, not just about race.
Okay.
I'm not challenging as it being proper or improper, but just that defending that it's meant to include lots of different persons and backgrounds.
Thanks, Liza, and thank you for doing your report tonight. We had a lot of questions and you handled it all very well. Maybe you didn't expect so many questions when you started out and do this, but anyway, thanks for the time you spent with the strategic plan group and for all your work tonight. Okay, so we're now on to the questions about the Board of Ed budget. The Board of Finance voted last night. It was not controversial. Apparently everything's okay. I would be interested in finding out, you know, whether you all have any more questions about the budget as we go forward. You'll remember that when we asked what is our role here, it's to vet anything we want to make sure that we can tell the RTM why we support the budget. So any question is a good question. I also wanted to find out from the folks who were part of the buddy system how that worked out. So anyway, so here's a chance for everybody to discuss what outstanding questions they have. I think we've dealt with
The buddy system did not happen.
what
So
happened.
yeah,
What
it
did
didn't happen. And interestingly enough, if you watched last night's Board of Finance meeting, Chairman Zagrodzky ended the meeting by commending the buddy system and how great it works, but it didn't happen. So I don't know if somebody didn't tell him it didn't happen or
Oh, that's funny.
Well, you know,
but it didn't happen.
I thought you said it didn't happen, and then when I heard him say that last night, I
did
thought
not
well, I
happen.
must have misunderstood. So,
No.
Ed, you say you didn't participate?
No, like I think there was some miscommunication. Look, I spoke to Jim Palin at length, and I think what had happened is there had been a sidebar conversation with Jack about not organizing this meeting, the one that was going around, and I think, and at least according to Jim, Jack was gonna like let us know this meeting wasn't happening, and I'm the one who started it because I kind of had it in my calendar as provisional, but nothing had been firmed up. So that's why I was like, oh, are we doing this meeting or not? So I think this was an idea that started. We didn't have a group discussion, but it never kind of got very far. And then I kind of picked it up again, like, wait, are we doing this meeting? And apparently, you know, that we're, so anyway, I don't think there was really anything to it other than, you know, people get busy and like the communication sort of wasn't so smooth.
That's actually not what I heard. I heard that the Board of Finance, didn't want to do it.
Okay, we want to hear from everybody here. So what did you hear? Go ahead.
I had heard that the Board of Finance didn't really think that the buddy system was needed. So I guess that message didn't get passed to the top, but that is why it didn't happen, because there were plenty of opportunities to it didn't just have to be the one night that Ed is speaking of. We were just never approached again.
Yeah, sorry, Teresa. No, I don't disagree with you, but just as it was explained to me, like the fact that this meeting was not happening had been communicated with Jack, and Jack was gonna take that back to us. Now, I haven't talked to Jack. I was just like, okay, whatever, sounds good enough for me. That's why it didn't happen. That was the meeting, not the buddy
and
system.
to be honest with you, if they didn't want to do it, that's fine. I just thought, like you said, Sarah, I just when John Zagrodzky said it last night, how great it worked, I was like, huh? So
Okay.
I mean, nothing to say about it not happening, but it didn't happen. So to watch the Board of Finance meeting, FYI.
Okay, well, I guess what I want to get to though is, do we have any other questions about the budget, and is there anything information that we would need to give to ask the Board of Ed about, because we want to meet with them another time. I know we're going to talk about recruitment, but is there anything else about the budget that you would like to make sure you have information about? Peter?
I just have a sort of, a softball in a way, but in a way it's sort of a general question here that I wanted to ask Dr. Adler is, you know, when John Zagrab in the Board of Finance says you should have 2.5%, sell us to 3%, and COVID, right? That was the guidance, right? The increase, and we end up at 4%, right? You know, I know it's a little bit different year, but this is still before all the strategic events, strategic ideas that we will hopefully have in the next budget, right? We cannot grow the revenue, we cannot grow cost of the system by 4%. So I don't, you know, I don't have a specific question, but I just want to sort of understand how he thought about it when he heard from his counterpart who holds the money in town, who says, give me 2.5 to 3, and he gave us 4%, right? You know, so how did it all play out in his mind saying, okay, you know, I'm going to do 4 despite being suggested that I should do 3?
This is a question for
That's for
Dr.
Dr.
Adler.
Adley, you know, I know he's, you know, he's probably gonna let him answer. I don't want to go what he's gonna point to, but you know, that's sort of general question and sort of gives me a vision how we're gonna think about it going forward, because you know, I don't think it's sustainable to increase the tax burden by 4%. I don't think the wealth in this town is growing by 4% a year. But you know, that's sort of broad question. Specifically, the other one I have was around the hiring that I already mentioned.
Okay, anybody else?
I just don't, am I on?
Carolina. Yes, okay.
think that's the way the Board of Education budget works, that they get a directive that Board of Finance wants 2 or 3%. I think they set up their budget, you know, depending on what they need to run the schools for our kids efficiently. And then, you know, goes back to the Board of Finance after it goes from the administration to the board and from the Board of Ed to the Board of Finance. But it's not that the Board of Finance sets, I want a 2.5% increase and then you guys sort it out. That's not how it goes.
Well,
No,
I think, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no. I know that's not how it goes, but reality, you know, reality is that last 5 years, the increases in their budget was, you know, 4 times below 3 and 1 times above 3, right? It was never over. It was just once in 2017 over 3%. So suddenly we have 4. Some of it is COVID, I get it, right? And some of it is contractual things that we have agreed to, right? With teachers and administrators, all this, but still, you know, it's higher than it was, right? And you know, possibly it's going to end up lower, right? I know there's some transfers and all that, but
I also think the reality is that, you know, we have a reserve fund that is extremely bullish, to put it that way. Therefore, I think as constituents, we have been overtaxed. So for, you know, no reason, I guess.
But didn't they talk about last night that they were taking down the reserve? Or hasn't that been something in the past year that they've worked on to reduce the reserve?
Yes, they did.
And I think
Yeah, and I believe FMB made that cut during the
FMB
budget
brought
process
it.
last year. I think
Yes.
FMB did it last year.
Yeah, okay. Peter, to go back to part of your question that doesn't necessarily relate to the Board of Finance, you know, I think to say to Dr. Adley, well, you know, how can you manage every year how do you expect the town to manage every year with a 4% increase? I mean, he may need that much of an increase, but, you know, I wonder, you know, going forward, what will the town do with, you know, 4% after 4%, you know, increases? I mean, I guess I'd be interested in seeing what his opinion would be about that. Curtis, do you have an answer?
Yeah, I would echo the comment that the Board of Education does not report to the Board of Finance. They're two separate entities. It's not hierarchical.
Right.
Board of Finance gives guidance, but Board of Ed doesn't report to them. The second is there any reason to assume anyone's thinking that a 4% budget increase is something they want to do ad infinitum? I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about the fact that this is a larger than typical requested increase. But in the same breath, everyone acknowledges there are extra costs this year and costs that, you know, that are contractual obligations. So I think we need to, again, we've said this before, I think we need to put our faith in the administration and the Board of Ed in determining what the needs are of the school right now, especially when we echo back to the way we started this whole discussion, which is, what do our students need? What is the profile of the successful Darien student? And I think we need to put our faith in these people, and we need to monitor them and we need to ask questions. But I don't think we want to put arbitrary numbers on and make an assumption, for one, and make an assumption, second, that anyone wants to do this on a recurring basis.
Very good. I have noticed that, you know, in the Board of Ed discussions in the past couple of years, that the chairman will say something like, do you have what you need? And that's something that's changed from previous years when there was always a sense that, you know, can't we cut here or there? You know, the sense of it now is asking the administration, do you have what you need? And I think that's a very good way to go forward. And also to confirm, no, there is no hierarchy with the Board of Finance at the top and the folks underneath. We confirmed that with the town attorney. So anyway, any other comments or questions relating to the school budget? So if we're not going to vote tonight. I think what we'll do is have the administrators, Dr. Adley and the Board of Ed, come to our next meeting to talk about the recruitment issues that we've discussed. Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss this evening? Okay, I just want to make a little announcement, and that is that from time to time, you know, people will ask me to put something on the agenda, and one idea was tonight's to ask Liza to report on the strategic plan. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that if you have an idea for the agenda, you have something that's happened in town that you'd like to have this group discuss, I would be happy to hear from you. You know, I'm willing to put things on the agenda that are appropriate. I was also asked, some people on this committee got an email relating to a lawsuit that happened, that's in place regarding something that happened on a football team several years ago. It does not relate to this committee. The committee didn't take a position on it. One of the people on the committee was very involved, but it was not the business of the RTM Education Committee. So I just wanted to let folks know who might have gotten this or might, you know, have gotten it forwarded to them. It's not like the official business of the RTM Education Committee, even though somebody who is a member of the group, you know, is very much involved. So does anybody have questions about that?
I guess I have a question. And look, I mean, I had, you know, met Jay would, I mean, you remember, I mean, Jay would be making these points forever. And I was the one saying, hey, it's not our business, you know, let the administration handle it. And I absolutely agree with that 100%. That said, having read the lawsuit and recognizing that there are things in the lawsuit that people say because it's a lawsuit, and also recognizing that many of the people involved are no longer here.
Right.
I would certainly like to have some, I'd like to have some confidence that some of the things that are alleged there could not happen again. That is a bit, especially when it comes to the bullying and things like that. Like, I don't know if it was true, but, and obviously my kid plays football, and it's like, it's just I'm less concerned about what's in the past. I know the district has to defend itself, but I would just want to make sure that whatever happened, if it happened, can't happen. That is, I guess I would put it that way.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, Ed, to that point, can I just add very quickly? That is why you'll hear a lot of questions about PD around coaches. It is that lawsuit that has driven those questions, and we never seem to get the answer. We get a basic answer of basic PD that every coach in the state of Connecticut needs to do. But yes, like, we need to know, is there some kind of PD going on to prevent exactly what you were talking about?
And I want to keep, and that said, I also want to, you know, start with the, like, if it happened. I didn't mean to say, like, if it, you know, it's like people make allegations like that. So I don't want to, it's not fair to the people involved to sort of assume this has happened just because that's what somebody said. But it's more of like, I would just like some confidence to know this can't happen in the future.
Any other comments, Barbara?
Claire, yeah, I have one. Perhaps this should be looked at by the ethics committee and not by us as an individual committee.
Okay, I don't think we're going to look at it. I think that Ed's point was we would the town should have some reassurance.
Well, that's what I mean. Push it that way. We could push it that way.
Okay, all right. Let's see, we did have one chat question. Okay, Carolina, did you have a question? Did you have your hand up? No? Anybody else? Some people who are new to this committee would like to know more about this.
That's
and
okay. That was me, Clara. Sorry, this is
Yeah, I
Holly.
know it was
That's
you.
okay.
I know, that's
I
great.
understand that that's a loaded question, so I'm happy
Yeah,
to
I tell you
wait.
what, I'd be happy to help you, to talk to you about it. I don't know that I should take the
Okay,
time of
thank
all
you.
these other people who know. Anybody who wants
I
to know
totally
more,
agree.
I'd be happy to help them. I could send you the
Yeah,
email.
I
that
thought
has-
there was a short answer. I realized it's a
There's
long
no,
answer. So no worries. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Anybody else who has questions about this or wants more information, please let me know. I'll make sure you get the information. It does not, and again, it's not the business of this committee in any way other than what Ed said, that let's make sure this doesn't happen again. And I'm sure it was very difficult for the folks involved. Anyway, any other questions, comments? Should we adjourn? Okay, I don't see any other comments or questions. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, Carolina, do you have your hand up? And Ed, is that your hand?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, thank you all. I know we had a conflict this evening and had to change the meeting. I really appreciate you were taking the time, and thank you, Holly, for doing the tech support. And again, thanks to Liza and all of you for your very thoughtful comments. Have a great vacation if you're going away. Stay safe.
you.
Good night.
Night,
Good night.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clara.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Clara. You're wonderful. Good job.
Agree.